Hey friends, it's Shereé, and in today's video, I'm collaborating with Natita of So Natural Dane, and this video is in support of the BHM Pattern Designer Challenge. In this video, we both sewed up the same pattern, and we are going to be giving you our opinions and thoughts on how we thought sewing up this pattern went. But first, if you're new to my channel, welcome, and if you're a returning person, thank you so much for your continued support. All right, let's get into it. If you hadn't already heard about the BHM Pattern Designer Challenge, I encourage you to head over to So Natural Dane's Instagram page as well as her website. The information will be linked in the information section of this video. She has put together this awesome challenge to support Black pattern designers. So if you haven't become aware of any Black pattern designers, this is a wonderful opportunity to support them during the month of Black History Month. And so on her website, she will list lots of different designers, from handbag designers to garment pattern designers, lots of different wonderful things. She's also linked some amazing Black owned shops. So if you want to buy some notions or fabric from a Black owned business in the month of February or anytime throughout the year, there'll be a list on her website that will tell you where you can go and shop. I'm going to briefly read to you what the rules are for the BHM Pattern Designer Challenge. And this is basically what she's encouraging you to do. She's encouraging you to select a Black pattern designer's pattern and to sew it up during this month and to post pictures on Instagram. I'll put the rules on the screen, but it says that number one, you must tag at So Natural Dane and at BHM Pattern Designers on Instagram and use the hashtag BHM Pattern Designers in order to get your entry counted. You must use a pattern from a Black pattern designer. That includes indie patterns, big 5 patterns, pattern books and classes, knitting and crocheting, bag making, quilted, and vintage patterns. Number 3, your item must be constructed and posted between February 1st and February 29th. So those are the rules in order for you to enter the challenge on Instagram. And there will be prizes for this challenge. So I encourage you to definitely give it a go, especially if you are an avid sewer that is active on Instagram. Now for this video, Natita and I have actually decided that we were going to both sew the KnowMe Pattern ME2055, and this is a pattern by the Corny Rainbow. I will put pictures on the screen so that you can see what this pattern looks like. So we both sewed this up. We both decided that we were going to focus on the pants and not the top. I can't speak for Natita, but for myself, I personally don't enjoy wearing thong bodysuits. And for this pattern, View A is a pattern that has a thong bodysuit, which I find to be a bit uncomfortable. In the future, I could definitely see myself cutting off the bottom portion of the bodysuit in order to make this just a really cool shirt, because it is really neat. It has some very cool details. Like, it has some gathering stitches at the shoulders. It's a more of a raglan style of bodysuit with a high collar. It also has a zip front, which is really neat. There's just some really cool details about this bodysuit that I think would be worth a sew. Only I would take off that bottom piece, or I would add a bottom of a bodysuit from a different pattern that I have in my stash that is a full coverage on the bum, because that would be more comfortable for me. Now View B is what we both sewed up, and that is a pair of color blocked joggers. As you can see, Nefertiti, the Corny Rainbow, has decided to make her version for this pattern in a tonal look. So she's using 2 different colors that are basically the same color but different shades of the same color in order to create her awesome color blocking. And I just think this looks so very cool, and so I was drawn to this pattern and I absolutely felt like I had to pick it up. Now I'm going to give you some information about the pattern, and then I'll talk to you more about my construction of the pattern. So this particular pattern is, as I mentioned before, a bodysuit and a cargo sweatpant. The fabric suggestions for the sweatpants is a double knit, a fleece ponte, sweatshirt fleece, and a terry knit. I chose to use a lightweight terry knit. I do have some regrets about that, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. The notions that you'll need for this project are 2 5/8 yard of a 1/2 inch elastic, 2 yards of 1/4 inch twill tape, Instead of using twill tape, this is for the drawstring in the waistband of the pants, I actually chose to use a shoestring. I usually buy them in a really long length in order to use them for hoodies and for sweatpants. So that's what I chose to use. The size range for this pattern on this particular pack is a size 8 through 16. And the waist for an 8 is a 24 and the hip is a 33.5. And for the size 26, the waist is a 41 and the hip is a 50. I made a size 16, which I think was a good size for me, and it is a 30 waist with a 40 hip. And I felt like the joggers felt very comfortable in that size. I did not have to grade or size down, so I think that was a perfect size for me. This pattern is rated as average, and I 100% agree that I do believe that this is an average pattern. Sewing it up, there was nothing that was terribly complicated. The most complicated part about this pattern would be that there's so many pieces when you're doing the color blocking, but you're really just doing a zigzag stitch, and that is a very basic stitch, and there wasn't anything that was terribly complicated about these jogger pants. Now, the time that it took for me to sew up this pattern, I estimate is about 4 hours, but it did take me about an hour to cut the fabric out. Now, that may not seem like a lot of time, but typically I can cut a lot faster than that. However, for this particular pattern, because there are so many pattern pieces, and that is a total of 12 pattern pieces plus the guide piece that will tell you how long to cut your twill tape, 12 pieces is a lot of pattern pieces for one garment, especially when we're talking about sweatpants. So there was lots of color blocking involved, which means certain pieces had to be in a certain color. So in order to keep things straight and make sure that I didn't make a mistake, I absolutely took my time while cutting out this project. And that took about an hour for me to complete, which surprised me, but also I did want to make sure that I did a good job of picking the right color for each of the blocks. So please keep that in mind if you do decide to sew up this pattern, that there are a lot of pieces and you'll have to be very careful at making sure that you are cutting out the right fabric for the right piece and the right number, because some of these are actually mirrored. And that's another issue that you might come against if you're not careful, is that even though you are having to cut the pieces separately, if you're a person that's used to cutting your projects on the fold of the fabric, so 2 layers, then you don't usually have to worry so much about accidentally cutting it on the wrong side of the fabric, right? Well, with this particular project, you're not cutting on the fold. You're actually laying your fabric out flat, and you're cutting out the pieces for one leg, and then some of those pieces you also have to cut out in the other fabric. You have to flip that pattern piece so that it's reversed, wrong size facing up, in order to cut out the mirror image of that pattern piece. I hope what I'm saying makes sense, but the bottom line is you definitely want to give yourself time to make sure that you do a good job of cutting out your fabric, and that way you don't waste fabric in the cutting process. So it does take time. Now, saying that it took me 4 hours to sew up, I do want to mention that I am a multitasker and I have children, okay? So when I'm sewing, I'm also talking to my kids. I'm also listening to an audiobook or watching Netflix or YouTube in the background. I also will take a snack break or eat dinner. And in this case, I did take a break to eat dinner. I think I took about 15 minutes to eat before I got back into sewing, and I tried to take that amount of time away from the overall time that it took me to complete the joggers. But for someone who sews fast, it may not take you as long as it took me, and I typically sew fast, but I was very distracted. I'm not gonna lie. It was a weeknight, and my kids were awake, and a lot of times I do my sewing when they're asleep, so I had to take a break in between my sewing in order to cuddle them and spend time with them, and then I had to jump back onto the sewing machine after they went to bed. So I estimate about 4 hours of sewing. If you are a person who sews quickly and doesn't have distractions, you can probably complete these a little bit quicker than I did. Even with taking my time and cutting out the pieces and making sure that I had 0 distractions, when I cut out my fabric, I had no music playing. It was absolutely quiet in that room. You couldn't hear anything. It was very, very quiet, and I was focused. But even with being focused, I did forget to cut a pattern piece, and it was actually one of the pockets. So I cut out, I think, 3 pockets, and I was supposed to cut out 4. So I did have to go back and cut out another pocket. So that's just something to be mindful of. You know, you can still make a mistake even when you're giving yourself time and you're really focused. So again, just be careful when you're cutting out your pattern pieces. One thing that I want to talk about is, again, the pattern pieces. This pattern has tons of pattern pieces, and I will actually put a picture on the screen so that you can see what I'm talking about. Hopefully with the line drawings provided from the Simplicity website, you'll be able to see all the different pieces. But 12 pattern pieces for one pair of joggers is a lot of pieces. And while it's not difficult to sew them all together because the instructions are written really, really well for this pattern, the illustrations are really great. There were a couple of times that I wasn't quite sure I was connecting the right piece to the right piece when sewing it up, and all I had to do was quickly look at the illustration and it was perfect. And so I was able to quickly figure it out and continue on. But because there's so many pattern pieces, it does increase the amount of time spent sewing. I've never spent 4 hours sewing any joggers before. So, you know, you definitely want to be mindful of the fact that there are so many pieces. There were also pieces in this pattern that I felt could have been combined to be one piece, especially when you have two pattern pieces that are the same color that are connected. So for instance, there is a strange like triangle piece. I don't know if you can see it here, but there is a strange triangle piece connected to a rectangle piece. And in my mind, I kind of feel like that was unnecessary. If you choose a fabric that is loud or different or has a print, you will find that this shape does not look as cool as it does on the Corny Rainbow. On hers, it's definitely not a big deal that it's created this little shape here in that color, but in mine, I chose to use a French terry that was color dyed, and I will show you what that looks like right now. And I feel as though it looks a bit strange being color blocked in that shape. So as you can see, I have that triangle piece that I just pointed out right here, and it is connected to a piece that is the same color right above. I personally think because of my fabric choice, it looks a bit strange. So in my mind, I would say that if you were going to use a contrasting fabric that has a print, I would take this triangle piece and combine it with this larger bottom piece to make it one piece so that it doesn't have this strange shape. Now for someone else, they might think that that's just a really cool feature and they wouldn't change a thing. I just think it's unnecessary, and it would be also a way to sew these up a bit quicker. With that in mind, I do want to point out that there are other color blocks in here that could be combined. So right here we have this pant leg, right? These two are the same exact color. I feel like that could have been one large piece, and that would have cut down some of the time and confusion when cutting out pieces. Now, is it a cool feature? Yes, it definitely is a cool feature. But if you're a person who is pressed for time or wants to have a cargo look with a bit of color blocking, but it doesn't necessarily need to have so many pieces, I would definitely consider looking at the pattern, and whenever two pieces are the same color and they touch, just combining those to make one large pattern piece. So that's something that I think would help with this pattern for me. But I also do want to point out that I'm not happy with the fabric choices that I use in order to create the color blocking for this pattern. I thought initially that it would be really cool to use this tie-dye fabric that I've had in my stash for a year, because if you look closely, the tie-dye actually has the same shade of green that is my main fabric for this pattern. So it's like a spot-on color for color match in here. So I thought it would be a cool way to bring in that color and make them a bit unique. But honestly, I think it's a little bit too unique. And because of the actual color blocked pieces, it looks a little strange. Another pattern piece that I think looks a bit strange in this color block because of my fabric choice is this large back piece here. I don't like the way that looks, especially next to the fact that we have the contrasting colored pocket on this side. It just looks a bit messy and it's not very cohesive. In the future, I would definitely see myself making these joggers in two solid colors and following the Corny Rainbow's lead and maybe doing two tonal colors, so 2 colors that are in the same color family. Rather than using a printed or a tie-dye print, I would just use a solid color. I also think that there are certain pieces that get lost in the color block. For instance, there is this large contrasted piece here, and then there is a pocket the same color as this contrasted piece here, and the pocket flap is here. You can barely even see it. It just creates a very strange shape on the front of your pants. In a picture or maybe far away, you may not even know necessarily that this is a pocket at all because it just creates this strange shape. Now, if you look at the Corny Rainbow's version of her pants, she also has that same shape going on, but because she has used a more substantial, heavier weight sweatshirt fabric, and the color and the fabric is just more crisp than this lightweight French terry, it actually looks really cool. It does not look sloppy, and I kind of feel like mine looks a bit sloppy based off of my fabric choice. Another thing that I wasn't particularly happy with on my version of the joggers is the placement of the pockets. Now, again, I want to point out that the Corny Rainbow's version is amazing, and it looks really good on her, and I think if I had chose a fabric that was more like hers, then mine would have looked great as well. But I don't like the placement of the pockets as I'm looking at it with this tie-dye fabric. Here, let me give you an example of one of the pockets. If you look close, this pocket here is a little bit above the waistband yoke, if you can see that right there. And I feel like it should be lined up with this color blocked section on the opposite side because it just is kind of wonky looking in my opinion. The other thing is, if you look at the front of the joggers, the front pockets, one is higher than the other. And that is absolutely how it's designed to look. See, this one is much higher. And also that top flap kind of camouflages into this top piece, which I think looks weird. But as you can see on her version, and honestly, to be honest, when I first saw this pattern, I didn't realize that they were not perfectly even, but one of her pockets is also higher than the other, if you can see that. So I thought it just looked that way because one of her legs is kicked out, which is one of my favorite poses. You know, I love to kick a leg out. So I just thought that they were looking as though they weren't even because of the way she's modeling it, but they are in fact placed one slightly higher than the other. And I think that based off of my fabric choice, that just looks really odd. I'm also a person that really loves things to be symmetric, balanced, even. So even with my color blocking, these shapes didn't work for me. I feel like I like things that are just like, this shape is the same size as this shape, and this shape is the same size as this shape, going down the front of the pants or sweatshirt or whatever it is that I'm color blocking, even bags. I personally like a symmetrical, balanced color block, and that's just my personal style and how my mind works. But again, her version looks amazing. So if I chose a better fabric choice, I think I would love the way my joggers came out more than the way I do feel about them right now. Another thing I want to point out is that I went ahead and did the French terry, which is a very light type of sweatshirt fabric, right? It's not thick at all. And these are actually two different weights. The color or the tie-dye version is actually even thinner than the solid colored version, which is also thin. And so I just kind of feel like when you're doing a cargo style of joggers, that you should probably use a more substantial, heavier weight fabric, in my opinion, so that you can have a shape that holds really well. These pocket flaps are just so flimsy. Even being interfaced, they're kind of flimsy and they flop. They don't hold their shape and they don't stay in place, okay? And I found that even with the solid colored French terry, it's just flimsy. And it doesn't have that crisp look, and even if you look at the pocket bag itself, it seems a bit droopy, and it's because this is a more drapey type of fabric and it's lighter in weight. So again, to have a more structured look like this would be preferable in my opinion. So that is one thing I wanted to touch on with regards to the weight of this fabric. It is very soft. It is very comfortable. This is going to be like a very great pair of a lounge pants. And so for that reason alone, I will probably enjoy wearing these, especially at home. But again, with the symmetry, here's another example. This is the side of one leg. I don't know. I just think it's a bit unbalanced. And again, it is more noticeable because I've chosen to use a tie-dye fabric versus a solid colored, similar color to the base fabric of these joggers. So those are things that I found to be undesirable. And I do want to point out too that these fabrics were not my immediate choice. When I was thinking about making these, I actually thought I might use black and navy, but when I laid my sweatshirt fabric next to each other with the black and navy, I was like, I don't know. I just feel like that's too basic, too boring. But I didn't want to spend money and order new fabric. I really wanted to challenge myself to use fabric that's in my stash. I do have a lot of fabric, you guys. And it's like fun to shop my fabrics and go through them. And oh my gosh, I totally forgot about this and I forgot about that. And I really wanted to challenge myself to use what was in my stash. And since that green in this tie-dye was the exact color as this base fabric, I thought it would work out nicely, and I was wrong. Now, if you're into tie-dye, you may think it's cool, but I personally just think that it doesn't look as clean and crisp by using the tie-dye in this pattern. One thing that could have made all the difference, though, I will say, is if I had done the majority of the pieces in the tie-dye and reversed and did these pieces that are used in tie-dye with the solid color fabric, that might actually look better as well. Just a thought. And I do have another thought. If I make these joggers again, I could definitely see myself using 3 different colors. And the reason why I say that is because I think it would be cool if all of the pockets were the same color and different from the base colors of the jogger legs. And that would alleviate losing this pocket here in the print of this color block piece. So I think that that would actually be cool and they would stand out more on the legs. One of the things I found confusing with the pattern pieces and the instructions was pattern piece number 21. This is the pocket flap, and it says to cut 4 of the fabric and 2 of the contrast. Now, in doing that number of flaps, that will be enough flaps for 3 pockets, okay? So, because you combine 2 of the pieces in order to make the flap. So this piece right here basically tells you to make 3 flaps. Also, in the instructions, in step number 10, it says to construct 3 pocket flaps. 3, right? So on the actual joggers, you can see that there is a pocket at the bottom of this leg that has a flap. That's 1. There's a pocket up here that has a flap. That's 2. There's a pocket here at the top that has a flap. That's 3. There's not a 4th flap for this 4th pocket. And as you can see in this picture, there is in fact 4 pockets with flaps, 4 flaps. So it's, I'm gonna have to say, a fault of the pattern instructions and the pattern piece, because they clearly say to create 3 pocket flaps. So I didn't create enough pocket flaps, and while I could have went back and cut another one to add it on top, I really didn't even notice it until I was done with the joggers and I tried them on, and I was like, that looks strange. Like, why does that pocket not have a flap? And keep in mind, it was midnight when I actually noticed the issue with these pants, because I do sew at night. Anyway, so even though it says to create 3 pocket flaps, you'll definitely need 4. So make sure that you cut out a total of 8 pocket flaps to make 4 pocket flaps. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. But that was the only issue that I found with regards to the instructions and the pattern pieces in the pattern. Overall, I do think that this is a cool pattern, and I think that I might actually give it a go. I would probably, though, tape all the pieces together and recut the blocks so that they make more sense in my mind, and they're more symmetrical. But I think that the version that the Corny Rainbow has made is lovely and very cool. And if you followed her lead and used similar fabrics as far as going tonal, 2 different shades of the same color, that it would look so cool. And also if you use a heavier fabric that will hold the integrity and the shapes of the pockets really nicely, I think that would be really good. Again, these are very comfortable, and as you can see here, I've used a shoestring in order to create my waist tie instead of using twill tape, which is what is recommended in the instructions. The reason why I don't like using twill tape is that it is thinner, and I just feel like the possibility of it fraying is more possible. I do have rope in my stash that I considered using, but I do love the way the shoelace has this finished plastic cap on the end of the shoelace so it does not unravel, and it's pretty sturdy. All in all, I would say that once you get through the process of cutting all those pieces, following the instructions is very easy. Constructing them is very clear and easy. All in all, I would say that if you are a person who has been on the fence about trying out this pattern and you really want to give it a go, that you absolutely should. I think it is a fun project to put together, especially if you have time to make sure that your color blocking is just perfect. And I definitely think that this bodysuit is unique and cool. I do love the sleeves. So I think that you should give it a try. If this is your style, definitely go for it. I definitely think that this is a fun pattern and that you should check it out. Okay, let's talk about what I paired my joggers with. This is by far one of my favorite hoodie patterns that I've sewn up. This is KnowMe Pattern ME2023, and this is a Norris Dante Ford pattern, and I made view A. This is the second version that I've made. Last year for BHM Pattern Designer Challenge, I made one in a heavyweight sweatshirt fabric that I absolutely love. I wear that thing all the time. It's so warm and cozy. But this time I made it out of this lightweight French terry fabric, and I love it. It definitely gives a different feel. It wears a little different, and it will actually be something I can wear all year round, even in the summer, because of the weight of it. So I do love that. I will say that the first version that I made a size medium, and that was too big. So this time around, I went down to a size small, and because this is a man's pattern, it is still oversized, which I actually love. I will say that this French terry fabric is more flowy and it kind of sags a bit, which is okay. It still looks really great in this pattern, but I do love the fact that my other version holds its shape a lot better. Now, due to the fact that this fabric is light and so is the tie-dye fabric, for all of the pockets, I don't plan on using any of them, not even in the sweatshirt, because it will droop and change the shape of the outfit. And I personally love the way a structured pocket looks. Now, with the version that I made in a thicker sweatshirt fabric, I can put anything and everything in those pockets, and the pocket shape does not change at all. This is a fantastic pattern. If you don't have it, please get it. It's really good. It has a very unique hood, and actually I'll show you. For this version, I actually lined it with the color block fabric, and I think it looks really cool. The hood is so neat in that it has this awesome shape. I'll show you. It's almost like a cocoon. Can you see that? My hair is in the way, right? There is no drawstring or holes to tighten it around your face, but I just think that it looks cool and I love it. Another thing I want to say is that with a heavier sweatshirt knit, like my other one, it stays up like this when the hood is not on my head, and I love the way that looks. So yeah, I mean, it's a different look, different feel, but I love it still, and I will get so much wear out of this all year round. So I definitely love this pattern and highly recommend it. But together, I think they look really cute. I'm going to insert pictures now so that you can see how they look together. You'll also be able to see that I styled my joggers with a cropped The Drop t-shirt from Amazon. It is a cream color, and I've matched those with my Nike Dunks that are also cream, and I just think that it looks really comfortable and perfect for a Saturday, which I went to 2 basketball games today for my kids, and I felt very comfortable, and so I think it's like the perfect loungewear outfit, and this pairing together just looks so good. So I highly encourage that you consider pairing these for yourself if you like the way mine came out. And as you can see, I have kind of given you a look of what the front and the back and the sides look with and without the sweatshirt. Ultimately, these are definitely good patterns. Again, one of my favorites, so I think you should give them a shot. I want to congratulate Natita on her BHM Pattern Designer Retreat for 2025. I was planning to promote the retreat, and this is a luxury retreat, everyone. I was planning to promote it on my channel so that you could go out there and purchase your tickets and all of that, but she sold out very quickly. So if you are interested in going to her retreat, you will have to go to her website and add on the wait list. But I did go to her event she had last year, and it was fantastic, and I got to meet some new sewing friends, and I really enjoyed myself. So I can only imagine that with this luxury retreat that it would be another wonderful opportunity to get together with other sewing friends and just really support each other and continue to enjoy celebrating Black History Month and Black pattern designers. Now at this retreat, it is all inclusive. You have your lodging, you have your food, you have the sewing machines, there's classes, all the fabric and notions are provided for each of the classes that are taking place. There's time to go for walks, there's time to shop. It just sounds like it's going to be an all-around lovely retreat. So again, if you're interested and you hadn't heard about it, go to her website, learn some more information about it, and consider joining the wait list. So make sure that you head over to Natita's channel, So Natural Dane, and check out her review of these same joggers. I'm excited for you to see what she chose. I'll insert a picture just so that you can have a sneak peek of her version. Hers came out really lovely. And I want you to head to her channel because I think that we have different views on this particular pattern and how we feel about it. And so I definitely want you to hear what she has to say about the pattern and learn about the details that went into creating her joggers. Make sure that you head over to So Natural Dane's Instagram page so that you can learn more about the BHM Pattern Designer Challenge and so that you can be inspired by some other sewists in the sewing community once you see what they've sewn up. And I want you to have the best Black History Month. I hope you have a great day and a wonderful week. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.